Hey everybody, this is Tim Gallagher back for a video blog that I started like 3 years ago, and then stopped. Actually, it was a normal blog for a little over a year, and then I switched to one video blog and then dropped it. But in the intervening time, I've had a bunch of realizations, and I see more and more the importance of the ideas I want to share about art and art making. So I decided to continue this in the form of a video blog. So I hope you find it useful and helpful if you're an artist, an art lover, or just a creative person with a lot of ideas that you struggle with actualizing and expressing. In the past, I have advocated that it's not important whether anybody likes your work or not. It just doesn't matter. The important thing is expressing it. And I can see that in some ways that seems like a Pollyanna kind of attitude. And so I want to go back and revisit some points about that. And one of them, I think, is that my ideas are based on spiritual concepts. And I know this is a real woo-woo thing for a lot of people, but that criticism is bankrupt, frankly. We've had over 100 years of rational materialism, and we are destroying the planet and eliminating our future in the process. Because that philosophy of rational materialism posits that everything is dead, the world is here to be exploited, and that people are just flesh robots, and it's no big deal if you exploit people either. And when you know that you're nothing, or when you believe you're nothing, why not just accumulate all the money you can in the world, because you're not going to exist in a few years anyway. So it creates this desperate hunger in people and this depression in other people. And both of these things combined mean that we're destroying the planet, and life becomes miserable for a lot of people now. Who knows if there'll be people around in 50 years or 100 years. So I don't think that it's a viable philosophy. And there's no evidence for it. There's no evidence that consciousness is just a byproduct of the brain. And you've got all these people who are adamant that any concept of consciousness that transcends physical reality is woo-woo or ridiculous, absurd, laughable. Yet they're no different from born-again Christians who go on and on with no evidence for what they're claiming either. There's no evidence for materialism as far as it being the origin of consciousness. So given the fact that there's no evidence either way, and the predominant philosophy by far in the Western world is materialism, and we're destroying each other and the planet based on that philosophy, I think that gives more than a little bit of credence to the idea of questioning it and considering other options. And I'm not saying to have proof that consciousness transcends reality, but given the fact that it's an either-or situation, I'm going to choose the option that makes me happy, that makes me treat other people with respect and appreciation, and treat the planet with appreciation, and opens up the possibilities of exploring mystery and knowledge of what it is like to be alive on the world, in the world and on the world right now. So that's my I'm laying my card on the table as far as the foundation of this, everything I'm going to be talking about on this blog, whatever. So yeah, I mean, if you want to dismiss me for being woo-woo, go ahead, but materialist philosophy literally is getting you nowhere except extinction. And the idea that science is going to somehow solve our problems is pretty naive. I mean, I can't remember the exact scientist's name, but recently I saw on Facebook, somebody had a post that said, you know, he was a scientist who used to believe that we'd solve all our problems with science, and then he realized, oh, science can't fix greed. Science can't fix stupidity. And it's debatable whether anything can, but being kind to yourself and kind to other people and having respect for the earth and for other people and for yourself goes a long way toward mitigating any problems with greed and stupidity. And being open to mystery so that you're delighted by life rather than minimizing it to the least common denominator and then not really enjoying that, by the way, except in a totally hedonistic, self-destructive way. All right, off my soapbox. I wanted to get that down. I also want to say that there was a woman named Marie Louise von Franz, which some of you may be familiar with, who was one of the primary students of Carl Jung. She wrote extensively about fairy tales, interpreting fairy tales, as well as the issue of the unus mundus, or the unity of consciousness and cosmos, mind and matter, and that they are two sides of the same coin, united in some way. And that became an issue for her and for other Jungians with the idea of synchronicity, because it's uncanny that sometimes you have a dream about something or you're thinking something and then you encounter that very thing in the real world, and the chances of that are pretty slim, and it tends to wake people up. And that gave rise to the idea that perhaps consciousness and the world are not so separate after all, gave rise to it in the modern Western world in the 20th century. I know that's a foundational idea for non-duality and Advaita and going back thousands of years, but in the Western world it's been kind of a new thing in the 20th century because it was dismissed long ago in the Western world. She had the idea that perhaps the unconscious is actually the physical world, matter. And that would help explain synchronicity. And I think that goes a long way toward opening up the artistic and creative process as well, because if you're working with not only physical materials, but they're also our unconscious, that makes for a pretty fascinating and juicy and interesting experience when it comes to being an artist and working with your materials. You're not just working with dead matter, you're working with the unknown parts of consciousness, the unrecognized parts of consciousness. Whether they're personal, collective, or whatever, it doesn't matter. So it's an interesting way of looking at things, and it can be quite fruitful as far as inspiration goes. So that's pretty much what I wanted to just get into today, that just lay down some of those basic ideas. In the future, I'm going to be getting more into practices and more philosophical kind of underpinnings of those practices, as well as suggestions for how to open up your process and help you express what you want to express. I'll leave you with the basic idea that one of those suggestions is that you just do what you want to do and don't worry about what other people think of your work. Because your artwork is a communion between you and the universe. In our society, we're so addicted to relationships and to society itself, and to getting mirroring, and to having people like us, and to be approved of, that we're just whores for attention. And artists in particular have become attention whores. And We sell ourselves and each other short just to get a write-up or get approval from some critic or to get a show or any number of things. And it really distorts what people are saying, because they're more and more, they're trying to appeal to these cerebral, depressed academics with a very narrow definition of what art, good art is. So I'm going to be really exploring the idea that art is really a communion and a communication and a conversation between the artist or the creative person and the universe. And that can bypass society. Society's largely ill. You know, as Krishnamurti said, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. So, communing with the larger whole of the cosmos. And so to say, you know, that artists, you don't worry about if people ignore your art, probably sounds crazy. But the point is, I'm trying to expand the field of perception and inquiry beyond what society wants or appreciates. And if necessary, if you're, and I'm not saying purposely avoid society, but if society gives you shit about your art, ignore them, because it's largely a very sick, self-destructive society we're in today. The world is not in good shape. So think of it as a conversation between you and the universe. And you'll be surprised at how the universe responds to you if you open up your perceptions and your ideas of what's possible. All right, so that's it. I'm going to start doing this more regularly, so feel free to check back. I'm going to be posting this on my actual blog site, and of course, I'll be posting everything here on YouTube as well. So happy holidays, and talk to you later. Bye.